Just
thank
got a
you.
quick question.
Yes, Councillor.
Just on reseals, Andrew, we had a few reseals in Geraldine Lane in the Rakapuka area, which has been quite exciting for those people. Are they just on a cycle of when they get resealed, or do we go out and look at the road and think that needs to be resealed? Because some people have asked a question. I mean, most people travel at 40 k's around Geraldine, but in a 50k area, they sort of think it's a bit unnecessary.
No, we assess our reseals based on the condition of the road. So theoretically, they work on a cycle, but then we always go out to verify that. So we have our roads that where the seals lasted, 13, 15 years. Others that last 7 years.
Right.
So it all depends on the traffic and particularly the heavy vehicles. That's the main criteria. So,
I'm not talking the hill areas or the heavy traffic areas, but more the urban.
Yeah, they are all sense checked.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, Councillor Pennington. Councillor Pye.
And just on the seal extensions, like there doesn't seem a lot of money. You're probably not going to get very far with that. But do we have an aspirational goal of how percentage of our roads that we want to have sealed, or does that feed into the long-term plan, or how do we kind of think about that, or we just go, we don't have the money, so we're not doing any?
Yeah, at the last long-term plan, a sum of 330,000 was put aside per annum for seal extensions. So if that's a council policy at this stage, and that's something that can be revisited at the next long-term plan.
Yeah, and you could have requests for seal extensions come through this planning process as well that we may have to deal with. Councillor Pennington.
Look, I just looked at my notes. My question, can we get a better explanation than you gave Nigel about the city hub? Because it said the long-term plan we had 3.9 million in, but we're only saying now 2.1. So there must be a reduction in what we're going to do. Because we had planned to do.
Yeah, so the point that Andrew made is they've pushed it back, but likely it's going to have to be bringing it forward again, because actually we're going to have some, hopefully, with Councillor Jackson's stewardship, some projects. So, so it's gone back, and that was the point, but it's hopefully to come back in so we can actually do some work.
It's effectively just timing. It's the same amount of money is there, it's just where we're phasing it in a particular timing.
So I guess the big thing is if the projects are there within those budgets on in both those lines, that we will be able to access funds to achieve what we need to achieve. Yeah.
So why wouldn't we have the 3.9 million in our draft plan if that's what we hope to spend?
Well, that was at the time when the long-term plan was developed. That was the phasing that was estimated at, but we think we're ahead of that schedule, and that's why 2.6 million of that 3.9 was moved into the current financial year.
So I get that, but how much have we got to spend this year on projects, to Nigel's point, that if we want to advance them?
About 4 million, I think, in this year.
Okay.
So there, that'll. There you go, Councillor Jackson. Remember that number, 4 million. Good boy, well done. Alrighty, any more questions on that? We'll move. Obviously, we've got some examples as far as what rates look like. Is there any questions around those? Otherwise, we'll move through to fees and charges. Yes, Councillor Booth.
I'm just looking at the commercial for Timaru, 7,200. Now, is that what every shop would be paying in that CBD or not?
No, so this commercial in general, and this is a snapshot. It's just an example. Jason, can you just speak to that a little bit, just on how we pull out those, or Andrew? So
sorry, I missed the question.
No, you're right. So we're just looking at rates. The example is on page 192. The figure of 7. Do you looking at the 7.2 or 7.4 or something like that?
Yeah, just under Timaru, and you've got. I'm looking at residential, multi, then commercial and primary. But just the question around commercial, and seems to be a huge variation in the general rate when it comes to the commercial number. Say residential 630 against 7,200 for commercial. Is that like a flat rate is that just a number that comes about by multiplying the land value?
It's part of the multipliers and the differentials. The differentials are very different for commercial. So this is the average for a property at 536 100, and that is what the general rate is at based on the differential from the residential. So those multipliers are what would have been agreed in the last long-term plan.
I guess my point was if you're in the CBD and you're having to pay those sorts of rates, that's a hell of a lot, but anyway.
Yeah, but commercial in general, so this is washed out. It's all commercial, yeah. So it's not specific to that, yeah.
And the differential is 4.35 times.
Yeah. Cool. So any other questions? Townships, Geraldine, Temuka, Pleasant Point, in regard to those, that's just modelling, just examples as such, how it would affect.
And remember, those ones are modelled at 13.3.
Yes, thank you. That's a great point. Okay, I'm going to draw your attention to page 197. I know Michelle's been waiting for this, so it's fees and charges. I'll whip through this quite quickly because a lot of it doesn't have any change. But so we'll start on page 200, airport.
I just had a question. I think I saw that we're spending $2.5 million on the airport, but we're not going to change the fees and charges, which seems a little bit crazy to me.
There is certainly opportunity to increase the fees and charges, but we haven't actually spent the money on that yet, and we'll probably look at increasing those fees and charges next financial year, or the following one, sorry, the first year one of the LTP. It's just, yeah, aircraft costs have gone up, and I guess, you know, the average costs at the moment haven't changed a lot. The airport terminal extension costs will kick in following that construction. So.
Cool. Animal control. Yes, you're right.
Yeah, Andrew, I was just getting on a plane the other day, 6 people at the airport helping you get on the plane, etc. We don't have to pay for all those people, do we?
No, the answer is they're contracted to Air New Zealand and we don't pay, no. Yeah.
That's great. How many people does it take to get Councillor Booth on a plane? Alrighty. Animal control. Anything? Yeah. No. Impound fees. Some on changes. Was there? No, there wasn't on that one. No. Art gallery. I think no change with that. Councillor Piddington.
We're pretty cheap on our corporate groups. I mean, how long since we've reviewed some of these charges?
Sorry, which ones, Stu?
Oh, look, main gallery corporate groups, 84 a day. That seems
thank you. Yep.
pretty cheap for a corporate to come and use the art gallery. I mean, I'm a bit like Michelle. Our rates are going up, and the bit we've forgotten is the user pays sometimes.
Yeah. Look, I acknowledge a conflict around spaces, but you know that is cheap. Yeah.
It's a bit of a balancing act. The marginal cost of actually hosting it, because they often provide their own sort of provisions. So the marginal cost for us to host it isn't necessarily a lot, and we don't want to turn it away. I guess it's a balance between trying to get something and not lose what might otherwise come to us. It did get all the fees and charges this year, as we'll probably find as we go through, have had quite a good look. So that's where you hit that spot.
Yeah, I noted the same as Councillor Piddington, and it actually turns up in a number of these different departments as well. The hourly staff rate for after our events, $30 an hour. Which is, when those sorts of staff rates are calculated, surely they should be in line with whatever wages increases there are per hour as well. And if we
Yeah,
look, yeah.
sorry, you keep going, sorry.
And if we're looking ahead to upgrades happening, rather than an upgrade happens and we have a large step adjustment to reflect new prices, wouldn't it be more prudent for a marginal increase now perhaps? That helps us on our way as well.
And being the devil's advocate, probably a lot of those after hours are more so community groups with some of those facilities.
Sure.
And so, yeah, there's a community good probably with some of those rates. Yeah.
Yeah, and I understand that we want them to be very affordable, as affordable as we possibly can, but I think, and throughout there, $1 across the board in each different one to me just doesn't seem well calculated as such.
Yeah, though, so look, in there, and we could go and happy to nudge them all up a bit. Often they're for people who might be helping to put things away or clean up. So it's not necessarily someone who's, we're not necessarily paying a lot for it. And to the Mayor's point, we often are supporting community groups. The idea is really that we just recover the costs because under our local, the Act requires us not to really be making money out of it, but to recover cost only. So we look to recover costs, and often it is to do a bit of cleaning up, tidying up afterwards, that we are providing that after hours support. Yeah. Although, to your point, those costs are increasing as well as we have to grapple with lone worker issues. And we often do look at alternative arrangements, such as getting contractors in to help also, and see whether they'll include those costs, the organisation themselves, and have a discussion as to whether they're prepared to meet some of those costs. So there's a bit of negotiation goes on with them, but it's not always as cut and dried as just here's a person, here's the charge. But we can certainly look at that and whether we should increase a little bit the cost of recovery.
But to our, yeah, it's a good point to our lesson with Te Moana. Sometimes price creep is more palatable than large increases. So we'll move past the art gallery. Don't think we'll go there. Building control services. Some increases here. Councillor Piddington.
The point there, 216, let's take the top one to 227, is only an increase of $11 over, so you're less than 5%, yet our costs that we're going to put on the ratepayer on average, the minimum you want, Jason's 13%. And I know it's not apples and apples, but some of these cost increases seem minimum at the back end of what we're being charged to do things. And if I look at, say, a building, you know, you can have people say, oh, it's too expensive, but the developer passes it on to the person who buys it or does the alteration. So I just think all these numbers, considering what we're going to increase the ratepayer as a user pays, is way too light.
Look, I'll let Mr Cooper respond to that, but I think one of the key points is that per the revenue and financing policy, and as Bede mentioned before, sometimes we're not here to make a profit, so we're here to recover costs. And so in building control and also in resource consents, which we'll get to, a lot of it is to recover costs. And so whilst the rate may go up a certain amount, each activity has its own percentage that it's trying to achieve. And I'm hoping that these numbers then take it to a point where building control covers its own costs.
I guess I'd like to know that because it seems that we have consultants and we haven't got staff. So are we charging the rate of staff or what it's actually costing us? A lot across a lot of these numbers. All I'm saying is we need to be fair to our ratepayer. If I ain't building a new house or doing an extension, why am I paying for it? You know, the services, the user should pay largely for the service. Same at the dump, you know?
Yeah, and I think what's building, I'll come to you in a sec, Councillor Parkin, building, it would be, what, 80 or 90%, I think, roughly, wouldn't it, as far as user pays versus spread across the ratepayer?
Yes, Your Worship, there is an element of public good in some of the activities in environmental services. So we build a factor in for food hygiene, even though the Food Act says it should be fully recoverable. There's things around that as a council we've decided the ratepayer should fund a small portion of it.
I get that, but everything I've looked at here, the percentage increases are minimal compared with what we're putting the rates up by. And I get this public good in some things, but not all things. And I just think I'd like to see some of the numbers behind these things.
Yeah, look, I mean, part of that maybe there was a little bit more work to do just to understand exactly what we are funding across the general rates as opposed to fees and charges and the likes of building. And I know we're going to come to planning, so it's probably a wider conversation. We'll go now to Councillor Parker.
Thank you. Similar to what Councillor Pennington was talking about, with the costs, the increase in salary and wages and personnel costs, but yet there's no cost increase for the work that's being done by officers like advice notes, technical full inspection. So they remain the same cost rate, but yet wages have gone up. So one would think if we're paying more for our staff, in reflection to recoup some of that cost would be for the service that they're providing.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Parker. You're quite right. What we've tried to do is refine costs at an annual plan with a view to maybe the next LTP being the opportunity to reset at more completely at cost neutral. And in building and planning in particular, it gets quite tricky to predict what's going to come through the door, what value it's going to have, what complexity it will have, and we are crystal ball gazing effectively. So we do come in a little bit over or under on occasion in building and planning, predominantly under at the moment. Yeah.
Cool.
I guess we're looking through this, I mean, shouldn't we just have a global number that actually we increase, and certainly in the departments, so like if a department is actually incurring extra personnel costs and consultants costs, the global number will dictate what percentage, what they need to increase, as to what the requirement is. So, I mean, going through this line by line is a pointless exercise in my mind. There should certainly be a global percentage number that is ascertained for each operational group, and that's applied.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Booth. It's, I suppose it's about transparency in terms of what the fees are for and our obligations to not make money on anything but come in at cost neutral in accordance with what we're trying to achieve. For example, we've had something imposed on us in the last sort of 12 months by MB where they've shone a light on BWOFs, our building warrant of fitnesses, and our compliance regime around that, and said you're not fulfilling all your obligations, you need to fully resource this. So we came to council, asked for some resource, created a position, and now that should be offset by fees, by recovery through fees. So it's there's strata within there that we try and balance the different tensions to try and arrive at the right point, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess at the end of the day, whatever it costs you to provide that service, you should charge. So if that's doing something with MB to ensure that you've got doing the right thing by the regulatory authority, that's what it is. So that would be, yeah, for sure.
Thank you. Well, Seth, this argument is the same when we come to planning. So we'll move through building. I think we've done that to death. Now we'll move to cemeteries. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I'm just looking at cemeteries. It's $655 on a Saturday if they're buried before PM, but it's $1,515 after 4 PM. And I'm just wondering why it's not almost $900 more.
just,
Is that, it might be just because of costs of having the staff there to do it, or just an interesting fact, I guess, more than anything?
yeah, and I think Sunday's the same, isn't it, too, if you want to get buried on a Sunday?
Yeah, stat days.
If you want to get them before 4 p.m.
You go for the morning.
That's it in
sunrise.
essence, is a big incentive to have a burial during, essentially in the, where there's, daylight hours and so on is what it's, so it's a
So
safety.
it's just an incentive more
There
than
is an
what it costs
incentive
us.
for it to drive it to a particular time, yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
thanks.
but if need be, we'll bury you anytime. No, sorry.
We're very
It's a
well.
bad joke. But, right, okay, anything more? Yes, sorry, Councillor Whittington.
The classic though, again, it's gone up $15 on $600. Your percentage is so low, 2%, yet at the front we see our personnel costs have exploded, yet fees and charges don't reflect that.
Well, I'm assuming we have some real costs as far as what the contractor cost is, and it's all for recovery. I'd be pretty disappointed if we didn't recover exactly what the cost was to us for those burials as such. But let's maybe have that confirmed before we sign this off in June. Cool. Anything more for cemeteries? No. Council and Standing Committee agendas. I just know, I don't think there would be many people that actually request a copy of a hard copy agenda, is there? And so I just question why we would charge, but that's okay, it's neither here. Are we charging, Councillor Booth? But I just think that's sort of a question to me around access to democracy, so I just don't see why we would charge. So I'd actually like to see that just zeroed out, if that's okay. We make that note. Is everyone comfortable with that, us not charging for or would you like to increase the costs?
I just thought it does say regular
does
basis,
say-
and it does, and I think given that we're moving to an electronic world, I actually think it's more of a discouragement to be asking for it all the time. But it's my
Yeah.
view.
I guess if we're asked, are we actually likely to put that cost in? You wouldn't, okay. Yeah, cool, comfortable with that. Need to move on, thank you. Infrastructure group, admin fees, anything on that? Yep, Councillor Shannon.
Charge rate, staff time rate, what do you charge yourself out for, Mr Cooper? And all these other, the other stuff? Oh, sorry, wrong one, yes, Mr Dixon. I didn't know you were so expensive, but no. What are they used for, please?
So yeah, there are a number of tasks that I have to do. Is basically licence to occupies, building loan restriction removal, which is in the delegations manual. So yeah, I do charge myself out when appropriate. It's, well, it matches consultants' rates.
Is it, you got the lawyer's time clock, 5-minute slots? Moving forward, let's go to hire. Not a lot of change in hires, so unless someone picks me up, we'll keep moving. Caroline Bay Lounge, Caroline Bay Hall, Caroline Bay Sound Shell, Geraldine Pavilion, increase of $1. That's price creep. That's good. 218, 219, Pleasant Point, 221, Southern Trust Event Centre. Obviously, that'll be topical once we have a new events stadium, but we'll work through that on another day. Temuka Domain Pavilion, 223. Washdyke Facility, 224. West End Hall, 225. Fishing huts, leases, etc. Probably more the longevity of leases will be a question for the future. Relative to coastal inundation and other climate-related challenges. No, we'll keep going to the next page. Land transport. Anything there? Sorry, Councillor Piddington.
Just on the limb, I know
Yep.
you digitised it, but there's no increase at all on, I shouldn't say this because I order them occasionally, but there's no increase at all. It seems ridiculous.
Who wants to do LUM?
Doesn't matter, it's just a general point on that.
Yeah. I guess it's probably, it might be an argument for a rate decrease if it's digitised. If it's all online now, it might be easier, I don't know. We'll move past that, but it's a good point. Land transports, 227. Library, 228. Licence fees. Jump a bit, we'll go to museum, similar, just higher charges, etc. Motor camps now on 235. Parking, 236. And then we come to planning on 237. Jump back in the hot seat. I'll pass to you, Councillor Fly.
Was probably kind of opposite to the discussion we've just had, but I did have an allergic reaction, as you well know, when I was looking at this the other night, but since then Mr Cooper has answered all of my questions that I had, and I was mostly concerned about the non-notified land use consent application fee going from $936 up to $1,800, and mostly concerned given where we're at in the district plan and that there are some legally, there are some chapters that are legally binding from now, and we seem to be caught in a limbo until we review that district plan where a lot of landowners have to get a consent for something that they never had a consent for before, and it's adding a huge amount of cost to landowners. However, Mr Cooper did tell me that the deposit reflects more of the actual cost, and when I looked through the rest of the report, the fees and charges for the environmental services has only gone up 179,000 overall, and so there's not actually more fees, it's just the deposit is more reflective of what the cost does, which doesn't give me a lot of comfort, but it does give me comfort that they're just not ramping them up. And the argument about whether we should be needing these consents or not is for the district plan process and not today. So I managed to get some lotion for my allergic reaction and calm down. Thank you.
I know that's all right. And I mean, that's, you know, that increase to 7,500 that looks massive, but you know, if it's reflective of the actual costs, and to the point that Councillor Booth made before, I mean, our concern, I think, relative to district plan, etc., in that example was, hey, you know, a repeat farmer. What was the example? It was around irrigation or something like that.
I think we had some farmers, and I want to say, actually, my gut feeling is probably he said that over the last year there would have been 30 times he needed a resource consent.
Yeah.
I used 20 in my example to you to be on the safer side, but that's an extra based on this extra lodgement fee, an extra $30,000 that they are paying that they didn't need to pay before. But like I said, that's an argument for the district plan. I get that council needs to recover their costs, and they're not actually increasing the costs, it's just the lodgement fee.
Cool. Thank you. Anything further on planning? I think your chair's done the job for you, Mr Cooper. You're all good. That's right. He's there for emotional support. Thank you. We're nearly done. Sewer 241, social housing 242. Yes, Councillor Booth.
Still seems awfully cheap, social housing. What's that? Yeah, but actually, do you know guess who pays that?
I know.
MSD. I'll pay anything. Okay, so that should be higher, because MSD will pay it.
It's a policy.
Nicole might be able to help us, but we do aim, is it to stay at a percentage of market rent on that under our policy?
Yes, it is, and the social housing,
What's the percentage from memory? It's in our revenue and financing policy.
I don't know, but we're around about 65 to 70% of market rent, because these are actually pensioner and old age flats, one bedroom, very small one bedroom or one room units, and most of the people are 65 plus or on permanent benefits, fixed benefits. Yes, they can, and they do apply. When we actually even increase by $8 or $10 a week, they do go to WINS and they do actually apply for the top up. But we do have people that are, even though we've got social housing, it's not really social housing. It is targeted at a certain group of people, and quite a rigorous application for them to get into these flats, because they are catering for those in the community that really do have not very much money.
Nicole, I'm right to believe that it is a self-funding portfolio?
Yes, it is.
That
Self-funding,
it
yes.
funds,
Yep.
the rent funds for any improvements and the maintenance of these units?
Yeah, we're very, very careful about the maintenance, so we have to target certain flats and healthy homes in particular. We actually came and asked for a lump sum of money to be able to make sure that all of our flats met the healthy homes, and they've all been through that, and we are slowly each year just working through the flats that we can actually, before we rent them out, we have to bring them up to that healthy homes. It is self-funding. From time to time, we may come for the landlord to do some extra work over and above. We've got 236 flats, so it does generate a lot of income, and we are very conscious with cost of insurance across them and all the other costs. So we are very careful, but it is a difficult situation all round.
Thank you. And look, social housing is another one. There's interesting different approaches that different councils are having, and I think it's something that we can have further discussion in later on, but we've got enough to deal with tonight. Sports grounds, I'm just going to skip through stormwater, swimming. Yes, Councillor Piddington.
Sorry, I'm just a bit lost on sports ground. The hard court, surely we're not charging 25% a user capital contribution when courts are constructed or resealed. That would be massive.
Hard courts.
On page 244.
I think that is correct. So, but that would be for a private versus council specifically, because as an example, what's an example? To move, like the Caledonian grounds would be an example of a sports field. They actually had to come up with capital contribution first before we would fund, something along those lines. So I think that is something. Yeah.
Just if I can see some clarity around that later on.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah. Someone caught a note on that. Geez, we'll have that. Thank you. Good point. So stormwater 245, swimming pools. Yep.
Is it the intention that there'll be something in that when this goes out for public consultation, so that the public actually get to consult on what we're charging them for the pools? Because at the moment they're all blank.
Yeah.
So since this was published, we've actually just decided to keep the swimming pool charges the same for this financial year. Yeah. So that has since been updated, but missed the deadline.
Why would we do that with the we've put everyone on a living wage, heating costs have gone up. I'm not expecting you to recover costs, but again, I don't know why it would sit at zero.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, I suppose, look, it's a political decision. I suppose the users generally, we look at that and many of the people who use that will be people who are experiencing that cost. Come forward if you like, Beth. So, but it's a political decision and we're comfortable if you wish to move it. Officers just thought, given that a lot of the users will be experiencing that those increases, it still keeps these facilities affordable.
Thank you. There's also a broader consideration around levels of service that we need to consider with respect to the pools more broadly. So this is a bigger piece of work that we'll take into account, we'll probably bring forward as part of the LTP process as well. So there's the levels of service, the hours that are offered, and the actual fees and charges that have come up as a sort of an after this work was actually submitted. So we want to put the actual work into that and make sure that that's been properly considered rather than just an arbitrary increase.
I guess to Scotty's before though, then if we don't do it for 3 years and we put $1 on it, there's an uprise, whereas if we put it up 30 cents.
Yeah, fully understand that, and I think it's a really valid point. So there was a conversation that we had around this, and we had to consider whether or not we're even delivering effectively on the levels of service this year around, and we haven't been able to meet that. That has to be weighed up with a political decision as to whether or not it's appropriate to do that at this stage within the annual plan process. I'm really happy to take guidance on that if people think that it's worth increasing that, that it does mean that, you know, that will impact potentially on our consultation document, but really happy to consider it. We made the decision around what we thought would be best for the community at the time.
Thanks. I'll go to Scotty, come back to Bede, and then we'll...
Yes, as a councillor with 2 pools within our ward, I think it is prudent to leave them as they are right now until, like you say, let's have our service delivery sorted, because you might find that any change that you have in income, if you have it at all, is probably only going to pay for the change of signage, if nothing else. I'd prefer that we started delivering the service you want to deliver before upping it.
And the other part, not exclusively, but what there's a relatively low marginal cost for each additional person that comes in. So if we push it up, we run the risk of reducing the number of people that come into that facility. So it's a bit of a balance of trying to maximise the numbers and the revenue, and because at some point that tips, but at the moment we can sort of bring people in with a relatively low marginal cost. So part of it is encouraging people to go in and use the facility as well, because it has a relatively low impact. But to Beth's point, well, there's a bigger piece of work. I'm happy to be guided on it. Because actually what I noted here, and it was an omission on my part, all of the fees, if they hadn't gone by a specific amount, should have gone by 5%. So we need to do that when we bring it back, because some of those, there were some fees that hadn't moved, but we had moved everything incrementally by 5%, but those ones specifically not because of the community factor we weren't sure about.
Cool. Thank you. And so there'll be some remodelling on some stuff, and we'll relook at that potentially too.
Yes, on some of those, but it won't be a on lot. But on some of them, I noticed in building for some reason that I thought they were meant to go by 5 and they hadn't. So there should be, but there's somewhere we'll look at the remodelling, and we might just clarify that for the end of the evening, Your Worship.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And increase of pools needs to be well managed around comms, because otherwise it'll end up like penguins and dogs. Will be inundated. Moving out of water to 50, page 250. On page 251, I see you've highlighted that the Parra water supplies needed to match the Downlands rate. I assume that's the same, probably the same supply really. Go through. Sorry, Councillor Booth. Apologies.
Just regarding water charges, I sort of highlighted probably a couple of years ago what I had to pay for water charges in Australia for commercial water, and it was about 3 times the amount that you're charging here. So I just wonder how you're about like 60 cents a gigalitre or something like that, whereas across the ditch was like $1.80. So have you sort of, considering we've got a large commercial base, have we actually had a look at that, and assuming what's going to happen with water and around Three Waters, that's how they are probably going to triple the water charge to actually justify what they're going to borrow. All right, so have we done, is that in here or
Yeah, we've done quite a bit of analysis in recovering our costs through the commercial water charge, and that's why there is an increase there. It's going up from 75 cents to 83 cents per cubic metre in the Timaru. So yeah, we have done it, but yeah, it's a case that there are only a few heavy water users that get this charge, and and they're generally the food processors. So there is a balance there on how much you can increase that cost, because some of them it would be thousands of dollars.
Is what the effect, if you doubled their cost, what it would have is they would go away and work out how to mitigate their water use, which is actually good for everyone.
Yes, so potentially, or they may use other sources, conservation measures, try and do that, or they may shut up shop and move to another place. That's always the risk you run when you up those charges, yeah. And Meatworks in particular have been renowned for closing down. Yeah.
Andrew, do the increased costs cover the cost of fluoridation of the water?
Yeah, these are really marginal costs, so the fluoridation of the water is actually included in the rate charge.
Yeah, Councillor Pye.
Just a comment, really. I just noticed that you refer to sale price of water, and given that nobody owns the water and we can't sell it, it's probably not that good a term to use in there.
We can't sell it, but we can charge volumetrically, so, yeah, interesting. But look, I mean, it's an interesting point, Councillor Booth, around commercial rates, and I think, if we do keep water moving forward, that's probably something for a discussion for the future on what that new model and et cetera looks like. So any further on that, we'll move to 252, which is waste minimisation. Just note a small error of 45,000 to, but that's not a major because it's in the right column. So, and my screen is frozen. Go to that. Cool. No, all good. Apologies if I'm not looking up often enough. Recycling services. Just a quick question. I've had brought to my attention that there's increased, fly tipping. Some of those things are tyres, etc. Could we look at what a one-off amnesty would mean for domestic car tyres to a dump? So, and is that a huge cost to us, or is it something that might actually be a good initiative to stop some of that fly tipping? Can you just talk to that, Andrew? Thanks.
It's certainly an initiative that can be incorporated. It's many councils, of course, have their annual inorganic waste collection where people go out there. They can be quite a cost because depending on how much is there. We're quite happy to do that analysis. We heavily subsidise, of course, a lot of these special waste streams anyway.
Totally, yeah. No. That's cool. I'll follow that up with you because that's a member of the public's asked me about that. Cool. Yeah, sorry.
Just on the, I presume we pay the carbon credits on the organic, is that right?
That's correct, yes, because it's a carbon producer.
Carbon credit costs, or used to cost about $80, we're charging 93. Does that mean that it's only costing us $13? I assume that's plus GST.
Just stand correct. Yeah, correction there. Yeah, a lot of the organics come in, we actually divert and put into compost, so we're not paying carbon credits there. It's only the organics that go into the landfill itself we pay carbon on. So most of the organics is actually diverted in.
Cool. Good question though. Okay, we get now, I think we've covered all that. Sorry, just my question. No, that's cool. So any outlying questions before we get to get back to the hard stuff? Yep, yeah,
Are you
questions on
talking
anything?
about in general, because I just have a question
Yep.
on the actual consultation document, or are you still coming to that?
No, we can go to the consultation doc now, yep, jump in.
So on page 274,
Oh, yeah, might be the same question.
yeah, just that very first question, nobody is going to pick that they want to pay higher rates, except for maybe Jason. I just wondered if we reframe that question more around the language that we've been using about who should pay. Is it this generation? Is it next generation? What is a fair kind of split there? I don't have the exact wording that I think you should use, but I think we should consider reframing that, because that is what this is about, is who's paying for this, our generation or the next? Because, yeah, I can't see anyone wanting to tick and say, set higher rates.
I guess the only thing with that question is that what we're focusing on is this particular financial year. So I appreciate the fact that nobody will want to pay a higher rate, but I guess because it's an option, we've thrown it in there as an option for people to consider. And I guess the next question sort of covers that future generation, or is aimed to cover that sort of future generation question. So specifically in terms of the consultation associated with the senior plan. First question is around this year, how people think we should deal with it, and whether council have made the right sort of decision at this point. The next question is around thinking about long-term plan. What is the approach that council should take going forward? Is the sort of thinking behind it.
Yeah, I just can see when we roll forward 3 months, it's going to be a difficult conversation if 100% of people obviously don't put the rates up. But you know, I know we're in a representation role, but we're also in a leadership role and elected here to do what's right, and that's going to be difficult. But I guess that's what being a councillor is about.
Yeah, Councillor Sian, yeah, you bang on.
Yeah,
Councillor
just on the same thing, the document, I thought it was right from the mayor, the CE introduction, it is very good, and it explains things very, very well, although I still think it is a little bit long and still a little bit too council speak, that if I was to hand this to a family member, all night they'd be saying, what does this mean? What does this mean? So I'd say just go through it once or twice more, if you can, just to change the jargon a bit more. Otherwise, very good. Thank you.
Cool, Councillor Booth.
I don't see the point in having in there reduce council services, because we've said we're not going to. So I would have thought it'd be more appropriate to reconsider council projects.
But the problem with the council projects, to the point, is that a lot of the capital funding doesn't have the greater effect on rates. So you can reduce all the projects we want. People could tell us not to do theatres and all those sorts of things, but actually it's marginal as far as this plan, because it's depreciation, etc., cost escalation. Take your point, but I think it's the wrong question. Councillor Parker.
Also at that point, we were told that you have to reduce a significant level of service to make any dent into the rates.
Yeah.
So if the public are going to take reduced level of service, do they have an understanding of exactly what and how much of that level of service is going to be cut to make any impact on the rates?
Yeah, that's a good question on what you would have to cut. We could cut CBay, that would cut that out for a year. Just an example, it's going to have to be a big change, isn't it? Or, yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess it's either a big change or it's a small change across a number of activities. And I mean, obviously, at this stage, you haven't identified anything that you would like to cut. And in terms of actually identifying the impact of that, I mean, we can't necessarily give that information today because we'd have to go away and do some work. But again, I guess the generic question in that sense is for, do you want us to reduce council services? Really, we should be making that decision now, I suppose, ideally. But again, it's one of those options that people have.
So, I mean, you'll all know roughly where you're sitting as far as numbers. Is reduction of council services at this point, is that a consideration or something you want to see in this document? No? No? No?
Yeah, I think you're right, Councillor Parker. It would be at the edges only, unless, to the Mayor's point, you say, right, we take out libraries, or we take out Sea Bay or something like that, or we grade rural roads once a year or twice a year or something. I mean, it's really significant in order to move the dial, to your point. And if I'm understanding Councillor Pye, what you're thinking is that we look to combine question 1 and 2 into something. Is it?
I get Mark's response there, and it does make sense given his response, but it does worry me that you're going to get very little people tick the box to say we should make rates higher.
One other thing, I just understand today that the Queenstown Lakes District have kicked a few projects down the road in order to, and a bit like our discussion we had a few weeks back around, we put the projects up on the and what the cost was and the impact and potential, what could you do with that? That's what I guess I was getting at.
Yeah, the main drivers are the depreciation and the contract costs. So that's the main drivers of that 13%. And so really that's why even if we shuffle out projects, it won't move it much. We've got to find something in those big drivers that will shift, which is why, to the point Jason's made as well as the Mayor, that it's not the capital project movement won't make much difference in the next year to the rates, because we've got nearly 10% wrapped up in depreciation as the single biggest driver.
Would be needing to grab some stuff. Just as an example, I would think maybe across property, if we decided to half our budget on R&M, we did that a dozen times across lots of our buildings. Maybe we don't do a full close at Sea Bay. I'm just thinking some of the things that might be OPEX versus capital would probably be the type of thinking. And then there again, it's kicking the can. So it's catch up. And are we at a point where we need to kick the can down the road? I'm not sure we are. So let's get back to, I think, is everyone comfortable they've got their questions? Because we need to move this forward. Let's go back to on page 128, which is our decisions in front of us. Acknowledge that we've asked some questions, that the officers will come back with some of those answers. There was the page 161, there was 1741, there was the personnel costs, some other things, and I'm confident that'll get picked up. Let's go to the recommendation. Councillor Piddington put his view on the line around option 3. I'd like to hear from others as far as where you sit on your options. Councillor Pye.
I'm probably sitting on option 1, to be honest, because I just feel like we've got to fund what we're spending on at the moment, but I also would have to declare that being a rural ratepayer, the reality is probably 5% for me. So,
anyone else? Yeah, Councillor Booth, thanks.
Look, just considering that we have inflation running at around 7.5%, and we know there have been significant increases. While 13.3% is not that pleasant, but I'm probably of the same mind as Councillor Pye.
Cool. Anyone else want to put there? Yep, Councillor Jackson.
I'm sitting on option 4, 10.5. I sort of worked it out to be about $1 per day average rates household in the Timaru district. So I feel pretty comfortable with that. Well, I don't feel comfortable with it, but you know what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool.
All the choices that we have.
Anyone else? And happy to accept someone move something. Look, to be fair, I'd probably err on the higher side myself as far as, where I know now, I think with reading between the lines, LTP is going to be tough. So the more we do now, the better off we are, because we've got that rate. And I know it's some challenging conversations just once we make a decision, turn off your phones and your social media for a week. But we still have to go through the consultation. Sorry, anyone further? Rural? Yeah, Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, I'm probably at 9.5%. I think people are doing it tough. We've got a 10% rate rise from Weekend to deal with as well. So yeah, I'm probably at 9%. I'm a bit like Stu. I'd like to challenge our teams to go away and see if they can find some savings. Because yeah, just probably for that reason.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Burt.
Yeah, I mean, I've sat here many times and haven't been in with other councils and formations haven't been as courageous as we might otherwise been, and that cumulatively ends us up in this situation. So this is probably a time to be courageous if you're worried about what people think and what that effect is going to be on you. You've got that comfort of knowing that you've got, this is the first year of this term, but that'll make it easier in the third year, if especially when we get into this LTP. Everyone's in a climate where increases are there. Everyone knows that there is that particular thing is there. It's relevant to their thinking, so therefore ours. And if I was going to do anything, it would have to be option one. But the difference between a 9 and a 10 is absolutely nothing in terms of what it means. Is the optics for 9 better than 10? I would be looking around that 10 if I was to be pushed on it.
And Councillor Parker.
I support Councillor Jackson on option 4 at 10.5. I find that's a bit more palatable for myself and hopefully for the community rather than 13.3. And we have been courageous, Councillor Burt. We did a big increase 2 years ago, I believe. So I would also support Councillor Piddington with his remarks to the officers to go back and to see if there's any way we can trim the fat off a little bit more. So that's where I stand.
Cool. Anyone else? Yeah, Councillor Scott.
Yeah, I unfortunately, with inflation running at over 7%, as Councillor Booth pointed out, and the economic impacts of the pandemic, unfortunately, costs have risen, and I would have to support option 1 as well.
Well, thank you. Who haven't we heard from? Who's left to go? Councillor Shannon, you can't hide, mate. You're on the front benches now.
Look at you guys. Yes, well, to me, I'm a typical Temuka, Pleasant Point resident, and I look at all of these figures and I think this is going to hit. This is going to hit. Me personally as well. I do know that the 13.3, as well as meeting the actual costs, it is an investment in future years, and I know that each year after that it will be easier because we've shifted the base to match the actual costs, and I get that. And when we look at the actual figure of what it means per week, percentages don't always tell the dollar story. A discussion I love having with accountants. You don't bank percentages, you bank dollars. And the actual dollar difference there for most people is not as scary as the percentages. And although I would dearly love to stay under the 10, the 9.5% was something I requested, and as Mayor Bowen pointed out, it was from a political point of view there that it looks better. I'd have to start with option 1 and see what happens following the consultation, because we still have challenged you to go away and identify some bits and pieces. So that is where I sit for now for the starting point.
Okay, cool. Well, let's move this forward. With the numbers in front of us, can I have a mover on any of those particular ones? Yep, Councillor Shannon. Option 1. Do I have a seconder for option 1? Yeah, Councillor Scott got in first. Any further discussion on option 1, which is 13.3? Obviously, consultation isn't a technical term, but to go to the community. And there's a lot of work to be done, and before then take the points expressed by Councillor Piddington around still looking for some cost savings, and we'll talk to some of those things and what we've got coming up. But I'll put the motion, all those in favour with option 1, which is 13.3, please raise your hand. And so, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7, it's carried. Are those against? Cool. So would you like that noted? Yeah. So Councillor Piddington, Councillor Jackson, carried. Okay. Thank you.
Just a point of clarification. So
Yes.
that's us going forward saying this is what we're looking at given the environment. This is a proposal which
Yeah.
will instigate a significant amount of chat, which is a good thing.
Yeah,
Not
it's
that we're
positive.
die on the wall. This is it. We
Yeah.
want your, this is true consultation and where it should land. Yeah.
Yeah, look, and I think there's some value to your point, Councillor Shannon, around the dollars. It would be interested the analysis between, the 10% roughly that, everyone, or 9.5, 10% that everyone would be comfortable with versus the 13.3 in dollars term just for analysis. Obviously, we know the media is going to pick up the percentage, but that dollar difference is important. So let's just make sure we've covered everything off, and Mark, help me if I've missed everything. So we've technically done the so we've done the number.
So I guess it's just about going through those recommendations on page,
Page 128.
the first page,
Yeah.
and getting those approved. With changes to RMA fees, we are required to go through what's called the SCP process for those, due to a bit of a quirk in the legislation, so there's a separate statement of proposal associated with that. We will add a bit of information to that, just around advantages and disadvantages, just to comply with the Act. So if we could just add that in as well.
Okay. Cool. You pick that up, Jess? Yeah. Okay, cool. So has everyone looked through all the resolutions on page 128? Yeah, Councillor Piddington.
Just one question before we go to consultation. We've brought up a number of things, including museum staff and other points.
Yeah.
When did we get clarification on that? Because I don't want the document going out as it is now.
No. Yeah, you go for it.
Yeah, well, we did have a meeting, there is a diary meeting for the 4th, where some of those could be brought back, because one of the questions I had was, on some of those, on fees and charges, do you want at least, I understood we were going to put in a 5% charge, so we'd have to, some of those hadn't had that. That was different to those that had had bespoke movements. So I was going to put in, and maybe a recommendation from you, that where there hasn't been a bespoke movement, if you like, there's at least a 5% movement, but we would ask whether that's the case with CBay. And to your point, in order to formalise it, I think we do have a meeting on the 4th. It might not be a long one, but that would be an opportunity to show you what the finished product would look like. But I seek advice from other officers. But that would be one opportunity, because there's not, did you want to say something, Anne?
I just wanted to point out the deadline for the consultation document at Courier is the 6th of April, so it's not much. I don't know if you're just not talking about the design or the wording in particular. Maybe if we could have the mayor and CEO signing off or wording changes in that consultation document itself. Fine for the supporting information on fees and charges and various other bits and pieces, but got a hard deadline at Courier at 6th.
So who's, sorry, that's you.
Yeah, it is a hard one. We would like to be able to, I guess, adopt the consultation document today, but come back to you on the 4th of April with the suite of answers to the questions. That might, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Who's on?
Yes, there's a couple of ways we can look at that then. Is you could delegate to the consultation document to a subcommittee of councillors based on the 13.5, and it could be a subcommittee of all of you, but it would just mean that you wouldn't have to formally meet to do that, so that we could meet the hard deadline to address the issues you've raised around some of those numbers and what it would look like in terms of all of the underlying information that's not in the consultation document but does sit behind it. We could do that at a meeting on the 4th, so that could be arranged. So that would be one way we could address it, is to work in parallel on that.
I don't want to necessarily drag everyone back, Pete, but I would like those questions answered and us to see the significance of some of those changes and some of those questions answered, really.
And I take that point, because whether it be the museum question, fees and charges uplifting a few by 5%, that 13.3 might become 13.1. And sorry, this is a question for you, Bede, how do we handle that?
Look, my preference is, and it's a bit of an inconvenience to everybody, but my preference is that the formal best way to do it for everybody to get visibility is to come back on the 4th. Now, in order to meet the deadline, what might work, because of the consultation document, is if we have a hard deadline of the 6th, did you say, Anne, is that we effectively have that ready to go, and if there's any change, it would be really, really minor changes on the 4th. And so that piece of work, you're looking at me as though that wouldn't quite work. Yes, so by minor what I mean, yes, that's right. And so what I'm suggesting is that you may wish to have, in terms of the consultation document, a bit like we've done in the past, we have a small subcommittee of councillors who then are effectively with the mayor are able to say, yes, this is good to go, and we present the package. But to give visibility, certainty and transparency when the number is significant and it will invite comment, while it is a bit, people might feel a bit, it's a bit of an inconvenience to come back on the 4th, or a bit of a hurdle, it would give it completeness and it would give it a package, and you would have an opportunity to see the answers and how they're modelled in. And to Jason's point, it may move it a little bit, and that's something that you, I think, may wish to see. So while it might be seen as a little bit of a not quite as smooth as we'd like, it will certainly, in my view, round it out on a matter of some importance for this annual plan anyway.
Yeah, and looking at it, I mean, what we go to consult with and what we end up at the end of June might be quite different to the points that are made, so there will be some wash up. But we want to be as accurate as possible, but look, I'm comfortable we can, in that time period, work through some of those other things. So let's go back to those recommendations. So I don't think there's anything really there that we need to, we just need to add any delegations around to minor amendments, or we'll pick that up on the 4th effectively, won't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we're okay.
Can I just check, do you, in terms of the fees and charges, is it a 5% uplift other than those where it was bespoke? And do we leave Sea Bay as it is?
Pools in general.
Pools, sorry, yeah, pool, I beg your pardon, pools.
Yeah, is that the feeling? Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. Councillor Booth?
I guess if you took each business unit and worked out what, obviously what it costs to produce that service, and like the Sea Bay actually sort of wipes its face, I sort of thought, in regards with charging through the gym, etc. But it's those other services, such as the environmental services, that are costing more. So therefore, they should actually be paying the true cost, or being the charges should reflect the true costs of that service. So that would mean that, just rather than just take
Yeah, so in a number of cases we've done that and gone through and done a bit of interrogation as to what is the actual charge, and that's been the bespoke movement. And in quite a number we moved it by 5%. There was some where we didn't move it by 5%, and we're suggesting we do. So to your point, Councillor Booth, that it's a good question. We've gone and done some of that work already in a number of the areas, and the question is, where we don't think it is needed, do we just move it up incrementally by 5%? And then the last area, the pools in general, because of the community nature of them, the comments made by Beth, do we just leave them as they are?
Everyone okay there?
Health and well-being.
Yep. Sorry. Yeah, all okay with that? Yep. Okay, so we've got that picked up. Let's move back to the recommendation. I think we can pull that all together. I'm happy to move that. Can I have a second? Councillor Pye, thank you. Any further discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Okay, well done. Right. In your plan. Done. Yes, sorry, just before you run away, Mark, I know you're going to escape, but we thought you would keep you as long as possible for your last Timaru District Council meeting. Look, big thank you from all of us, and I know that's from both governance and the officers. You'll truly be missed. I've got some great notes in front of me, so I'm just going to go through your resume. LTPs since the early 2000s, and Timaru has been well known around sector excellence through your leadership. In 2015, Taitura, which was the local government's managers group, introduced an excellence award for LTP consultation documents and engagements with the community, and Mark was the brains and author of this. Every LTP TDC has been singled out for excellence, so we know that you've been a very large part of that, and though knowing you well enough, you would probably shy away and say it's a team effort, and I don't disagree, but great leadership is never to be put aside. So also electoral officer we picked up, wasn't 4, it was 7. I don't know why you'd want to put yourself through that, to be fair. But a big thank you from all those that have been successful and unsuccessful, because to have someone that you can go and talk to that knows it like the back of their hand is pretty important. I think that's your point, Councillor Scott. Look, your knowledge and wise counsel around meetings and all those things has been fantastic from elected members' point of view. Really appreciate that. I know that you're, well, unfortunately too well, because, you've been picked up by another council, but you've got huge respect across the country, so, in local government matters. So just like to acknowledge that. And just a couple of comments from across the organisations in general. His knowledge, willingness to share is legendary, even often meaning he ends up doing his day job out of hours. No surprise there. His team can vouch for the wearing in the carpet en route to Mark's desk. They have considered putting traffic management plans in place. Hugely respected by his team, former as well as current, for his support, guidance and knowledge. So just a big thank you. You will be missed. We know you're just up the road, so I'm sure we'll see you again. But yeah, thank you very much for your service.
Thank you. Yeah, it's interesting times actually, but I really appreciate those words, and genuinely wish you well as you move forward. It's not an easy job what you do, and it's been a real privilege to serve this council in this district, and like you say, just up the road, so I'm sure we'll see each other again. So thank you.
Appreciate that. So, Mark, you're dismissed. You're more than welcome. More than welcome to. And so now, apologies to Nicole. You've been watching anxiously in the wings, and we've got people online still that we'll bring in. So we're now on, where are we? 281. Go for it, Nicole. All yours.
Thank you, Your Worship, councillors and those online. And I want to welcome the team and just introduce, we have Peter Leong and Jessica Kibble White from RDT, who are the engineers to the contract and the senior project manager, and also Leonard Pagan, Rawlinsons, who is our QS, and also we have Anton Trixel, who is our Anderson Lloyd senior partner, and he is the one that's helped construct the contract as well. So they're online just in case there are any questions, and I'll refer to the paper, but also maybe open up the floor first of all to Nigel, who is the now sponsor for the project, and it will land in his department when this is all finished. And then I'll also open up if Jason would like to say any words, and then I'll launch into the paper.
Thanks, Nicole, and thanks for that welcome. Looking forward to taking over as a project sponsor for this particular project and working over the coming years with Nicole in this area.
Thank you. To add, right, thank you. So, paper before you, and a great milestone yet again for this project, and appreciating it's been on foot for a while, so I won't labour too long on the conversation here. So we're now looking at what we call the developed and detailed design phase. So the first part now of the design and construction. It is within the budget scope, and we had a price for this from South Base last year. And at the time we sent them away, I didn't feel that the number on the table was palatable for us at the time. We sent them away to break that first bit of the design into two, which was then the investigation stage, so that they could get a better understanding of the state of the Theatre Royal, the land area, and also preview the prelim design, and also come back with any changes that were then requested through the councillors and the option that was chosen at the time last year, and option 1. So they're back in front of us now with a number which we feel is palatable and which the team have processed, and also the QS has reviewed for us and is in line with current market value for the services that are going to be produced for us. Full developed plans, which means they will now take the submission comments that we had in December, and we've been through with the reference group, and the reference group can speak to this shortly, and looked at what's in, what's out, and what we can then bring in during the developed design with further conversations with interested stakeholders. This is not opening up the consultation again, but it is saying we've consulted, we've got the information, we now want to look at how we bring that into the design, and we come back to you as a group with all of that information and any added cost that some of those additions would bring to the project, and allow you to think your way through whether you want them in there or not. And some of the salient points of the contract are noted in that there are what I call the backdoor opportunities. So we have South Base engaged, but we can, for valid reasons, come out of that contract. They've got no entitlement, as it's noted here, to rely or assume that after this we would go forward, and also no obligation on us for the full construction unless we entered into that conversation and began those negotiations. So again, we've got gateways through here that should anything happen in the environment or prices come back that we are not comfortable with, we can stop, think and move forward again. TDC in its absolute discretion can terminate the contract for developed and detailed design or construction at any time. Again, that is not there for flippant or easy reasons. That is very genuine things that could happen in the market, and this gives the opportunity, if we have a major incident or the world changes for us, there's an opportunity to have those discussions with everybody and halt the process. TDC and South Base will be joint owners of all the intellectual property that's prepared, and that means going forward they, along with us, though, we own any of that work, and should we stop or need to stop at any point, we can then rely back on all of that work and the cost associated and use that to our full discretion as and when. So I won't go any further through there other than we're ready to go. The team in Christchurch are ready to get moving on the 27th of March. They will come down here work with the hoardings, take over part of the site, start to work on that developed, and come to meetings as and when we request them to do that. I think what I'll do is leave it there. The paper speaks for itself, and the option is that we move forward and into this first part of this developed and detailed design so that we can get on with this project for you. And I open it to the floor.
Councillor Scott.
I'll start, team. Sorry. I have 6 points that I just would like to work through if that's okay. So point 18, I just wanted to talk about that. 283, point 18 of the report. Unlike Councillor Pye, who has allergic reactions, this makes my blood boil a little around the language that is used about additional or further elements. I made it very clear back in November, there is no additional elements. 57.1 million is all this project can cost. And I continue to see language that would reference that we have the appetite for additional things. And I just wanted to record it that I do not support that kind of language in a report that we've made it very clear there is no more money. So that's my first thing. So, and in point 20 it is in there too. Point 20, number 2, again it talks about all agreed additionals will be priced and brought back to council. You have your mandate. You need to really start thinking about how we're doing that. Point 22, we cannot approve early works construction in September without bringing back full construction costs to this table in February 2024. I presume that is a typo and is around the wrong way. So no construction will commence before the full costs are brought back in February. So I presume that's wrong.
So just going back to the
There is no approval, we cannot approve, no approval of early works construction costs in September 2023 can be approved before the approval of full construction costs in February 2024. That's like the chicken before the egg, or the horse before the cart, or whatever.
Thank you. So what I'll go to each of the points and also open up to RDT Pacific on the line to speak to anything as well. So the 18 and the 19, first of all, the language there was to give the wider public the understanding of what happens in a developed and what happens in detailed. There is no, we understand that there is no movement to bring further things back, but in your no's and yeses, there are some areas that have been contemplated and we've not got them in there, so we haven't priced them. But if during any further conversations there are anything else that gets added, that is the element. So aware that we're within budget, we don't wish as a project team to add any more to that. We feel we've thoroughly talked to stakeholders. If you feel that there's more that should or could come into the build, it is a variation and it's an added element that gets brought to the table. It is not our wish to do that.
We were assured that we had future-proofed this build back in November and that everything was in there. I am pretty sure I asked that question. Is everything in there? Yes was the answer.
Yes.
Okay, so you continue to say that.
Yeah.
Okay, and bullet point 22, so I presume that's around the wrong way.
So early works, what we'd actually also talked about was bringing early works packages, meaning some of the civil works. We've got some demolition of the back end of the Criterion.
Yes, but what happens if we can't afford the build in February 2024 and you've started early works construction?
Well, the part of the back end of the Criterion, in all honesty, either we leave it as is or we take that down. So to take it down allows better use of a green space next to the theatre hall if you don't do anything further. And the early work, the works to create any driveways could be put on hold. So as we said, as we're working through the developed and into detail, we start to get an indication of some of the numbers that would come forward. We know that we have a set budget. South Base are very aware that there is absolutely no appetite to go past a ring-fenced number that we are working with. So if you don't wish any early works packages to be brought forward, and that was also working with MB to get some activity on the site. We will hold off all of those early works and wait until the full construction. And, sorry, there was
29.
another point, 29,
No,
yes.
is, my question just was, when will the construction contract be fixed? So in there you talk about the two separate portions of this contract. So there's the design element, which is we're wanting to approve today, and then there's obviously the construction contract, which is the portion two.
So we're working that by December this year, we would have an indication of that number, and as it says there, the number would come in the cost in February 24 before construction starts.
Okay.
So we're looking to get that number by December so that we can actually, or certainly if we can get it in November, that would be great, but I think we've then got to do the due diligence on that number, run it through the QS and bring to the reference group, so we do that as we go through this.
Perfect, okay. Point 33, you just talk about there about an internal consultation has been conducted with the project officer working group. I just wondered what the makeup of that group was.
So that was the original project steering group, which is the internal officer, so it was the regular group that we had before the reference group was actually formed. So there is an officers, so there are meetings that I have with the project group and in consultation with Jason or Nigel, and we do that because there are also some internal conversations we had to have with the project group, and then we come forward now to those reference group meetings. So this is the new name for what was the project steering group.
I sort of thought that might be the case. Yeah. And just 37, I think I understand, but I just was keen to make sure I did. So it says the project has been reverse engineered to derive an available design and construction budget, but it excludes all our internal costs, client-side consultation fees, furniture, blah, blah, blah. So we have so where is that being recorded?
So that
where are those?
Yeah, so that information was available previous to some of the papers we brought up before Christmas. So we looked at the overall budget, the project budget 57, and we reverse engineered to get ourselves a construction. So we took off the costs of the consultants, our escalation, our contingency, and we worked backwards with what we call reverse engineered, so that we could ring fence a number for the construction budget, which includes all the designs, etc. So we're within that.
But those costs are actually captured in the 57.
In the 57, yes. Everything is actually backwards within the 57. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Most welcome.
Brilliant. Councillor Paddington. Yeah, I had point 22 noted. So who approves the early works of construction? And I'm a bit like Stacey. I want to know what they are and why we're doing them early.
Yeah, so we will bring all of those to the reference group as well as to council. It is, and what we're trying to do is speed up some of the time element to get forward into the construction by doing a lot of those early moving of earth to create the car park platform and the driveway down, and then remove the back of the Criterion Hotel, and then shore up the front so that we can get ready to go straight into the civil works. That would all be costed. It's what we call that SP2B. It's a little bit complicated, but it's there. If you choose that you don't wish to do that and wait for that to come in the full construction, it's still within the construction amount that we've allocated. It just means we're asking them to start some of these works a little bit sooner than waiting then to go into the civils and the full construction after Christmas in that February 24.
Yeah. Clarify that though, but there'll need to be consents applied for and all
so
that.
that's that. So we're doing some of the consents now, but also we've got to actually back date to those consents so that we can have the team ready and boots on the ground to really get stuck into that work. Yeah.
Councillor Paddington, to your question, it's either via, those are approved either by council, like a meeting like this, or a tenders and procurement meeting where all of council is invited under the delegation that's given on that matter. So that's where it's approved.
Questions for the team online at all? We've got everybody available should you want
So
to
keep them up.
have a chat.
Any further questions from the floor though, team? or, I get a feeling, then, Councillor Scott, you're pretty comfortable with everything's been covered. Councillor Piddington, anyone else? Councillor Booth? No, nothing? Okay, well, yes, Councillor Parker,
Just
thank you.
one quick question, following on, point 22 as well, regarding the early works on the hotel. So if that was to go, my question is it costing us anything with the maintenance of that building at the moment?
No.
And if we do early construction, then do we have ongoing costs related to looking after what we've done while we wait for the rest of it to catch up?
Yes, there would be some cost in regards to shoring up the front of the Criterion Hotel, because we're keeping the facade and we have to make sure that we've got containers on either side. At the moment it is propped up, so that propping would remain, and there will be some propping inside, but we also have to make sure that we make that safe for the rest of the work that we need to do, because there'll be people on the ground. So getting all of that in and doing all of our further geo works and investigation and channeling ready for all of the stormwater and other services that would go in underground. So that's the sort of work that would go on pre the full construction. So it's that stuff below the ground and that demo work. But there would be some cost, but the project is underway at that point.
Cool. All covered? Cool, so we've got a recommendation in front of us. Someone comfortable to move that? Councillor Pye, Councillor Shannon, thank you. Put the motion, all those in favour please say aye. Aye. Thank you. Look, and thanks online, let it in, Jessica, appreciate, I think that's all that's there. Is it, appreciate you staying up for us. Righty.